welcome back to Rolling Solo. My name is Adam Smith, and as you can tell from the introduction as well as what you're seeing here on the table, yes indeed, Bloodborne, the board game, is getting a showcase here on the channel. I've been looking forward to putting this together for you guys for quite some time, and even made a couple hints and promises earlier on when it originally landed. Well, we are ready to go. So in this video, we're going to be focusing on the setup only of the Long Hunt, and then we'll be diving into the gameplay, the first part of the gameplay. We'll go over the rules to give you a great idea as to how this game works. Also, it's worth noting there is an FAQ that's been released by CMON. I highly recommend you check that out because inside of the core rulebook there have been edge cases that have been clarified through that FAQ to ensure correctness. Now, without further ado, let's go ahead and start with the very first step of setup. There are 4 campaigns to choose from in Bloodborne, the board game. Each campaign is going to feature its own unique story revealed over the course of its 3 chapters, and then each chapter has its own unique missions, enemies, and surprises to uncover. Now, there are 4 of these campaigns inside the base box. There's more of them in outside expansions. The ones you can expect to find in the core box are the Long Hunt, Growing Madness, Secrets of the Church, and Fall of Old Yharnam. Now, to begin things off, we're going to be going with the Long Hunt. When you open up the core box, you will find inside these packs of cards are all sealed together in bricks, so there'll be 4 of them. There's also no recommended order to play these particular campaigns, and you can pick and choose whichever one you want to start with, but I highly recommend starting with the Long Hunt. And even though there are 3 chapters within each of these campaigns, you don't have to complete every single chapter before your session ends. You can complete just 1 chapter and save your progress right then and there, come back to it for chapter 2. So let's go ahead and set up the campaign of the Long Hunt. So in the middle, you're going to have an introduction card, which is going to be read at the start of the campaign. We'll do this in part number 1. On the right, we have chapter cards, and these are going to display the rules and the setup for each of the 3 chapters. And of course, you start at chapter number 1. And then finally, on the left, we have the mission card deck, which is all numbered 1 through a countless amount of cards. You do not want to shuffle this, as finding cards will become a lot more difficult if you do. It's also worth noting that you do not want to go through this deck nor have any prior knowledge going in. So the first time you play the game, make sure this pile of cards with the numbers on it stay face down, and you do not read anything or reveal any cards until specifically told to by other cards within the game. You'll see how that works very soon. The first thing the players are going to do, or a player in this case, as I'm playing solo, is to grab one of the dashboards. There's 4 of them inside the core box, and they all have a different color banner underneath the words Hunter Dashboard. So in this case, mine's purple, which means when I grab the miniature for my hunter, which we'll choose in a second, I'll be grabbing a purple base for it. The next very important decision is choosing the hunter which you want to control. Now, in the core game, there are 4 of them. Again, through expansions, whether they be retail release or through the Kickstarter, there are many more beyond this. You'll also note that these player dashboards are double-sided, so there are differences if you flip them over as you're changing your weapon when you do so. So for this particular playthrough, we're going to choose the one in the bottom right. You'll see on the hunter dashboard that we have on the table, there's a trick weapon area. That is where the dashboard for your hunter and its weapon are going to be placed. With the trick weapon in place, we now need the firearm card, the miniature, and we're also going to go ahead and grab that purple base for the miniature. It'll be easy to find the particular firearm for your hunter, as the artwork in the top left of that hunter pistol, for example, matches the artwork in the bottom section where you have your trick weapon dashboard. In Bloodborne, it's really important that you have a bunch of health, so make sure that you get your health in the slot area for HP. You'll see a 6 there, your maximum is 6, and you start with that to begin. It's worth noting in the core box, these are tokens. These hearts that I've placed on camera right now actually come from our Arcadia Quest. I just found that they fit this perfectly. Usually when you're playing a game with multiple players around the table and everyone's controlling a hunter, each of you will take a player aid card. However, when you're playing solo, you can go ahead and take 2 of these cards and flip them to the appropriate side so you actually see both sides at any given point. The first side is going to run you down through the whole flow of the gameplay, all the way from actions, round summary, hunter's dream, attacking, and rewards cards, and then the final side of that player aid has effect keywords. These will all be really handy to have front and center, especially when you start learning the game. Each hunter at the very beginning of a campaign is going to start with a hunter deck that's comprised of 12 stat cards. These stat cards represent the core abilities and skills of the hunter, so you're going to have 3 of each of the different types. In the top left-hand corner of each of these cards, you'll see a symbol that correlate back to a type of stat card. So we have the green ones, which are endurance. These cards allow the hunters to dodge enemy attacks. We have the blue ones, which are skill. These cards focus on staggering the enemies and interrupting their attacks. We then have strengthen. These cards increase the raw damage and attack deals. And vitality. These cards grant defense options and extra card draws to the hunter. Combine all 12 of these together and that creates your starting hunter deck. You can place this nearby to your dashboard. Let's switch gears over to the hunt board setup. We have enemy card slots across the top for 1, 2, and 3. There's icons that relate to each of them based on when they're slotted in. You'll see that in a second. Bottom left here, we have the chapter area for the chapter cards that we talked about earlier in the video. We have the Hunter's Dream area here where there's some upgrade card slots. This is going to allow you to upgrade the deck we just went ahead and set up. And then below that, we have a track, which is called the Hunt Track. It will progress from the furthest left position all the way to the right, and if time runs out, well, that's bad news for the hunters. With the hunt board now on the table, we'll go ahead and place the chapter card that we're planning on starting with, which of course is chapter number 1. I flipped it over to its setup side to start because this is going to let us know what enemies and tiles will need to be set up very, very soon. We also don't have to place chapter 2 and chapter 3 underneath of this. If you only plan to play one chapter, save your progress, put the game away, just put out chapter number 1 in this slot. But if you plan to play through the whole campaign in one go, then you can place all 3 chapter cards here if you wish. Next, go ahead and place your chapter deck next to this hunt board, as well as the introduction card we'll be reading in part number 1. We'll also go ahead and place the hunt track token in the first position. Next, find all of the stat cards that don't have the basic keyword at the very top of them, shuffle them into a gigantic deck, place it next to the Hunter's Dream, and right now we're going to draw 4 off the top and fill the row. And just like that, the Hunter's Dream has been populated with a number of upgrade cards for you to acquire and bring into your deck with blood echoes in the future. Next, find the consumable deck, which is quite easy as it has consumable written right on the back of the cards. Shuffle those together and place them near the hunt board. Next, place the rewards deck near the hunt board with the text face down. Now, there are 2 sides to these reward cards. One has some artwork on it as well as a title. The opposite side has the ability and the description around how it works. So make sure that side is face down. Something else I like to do is to place out all the remaining firearm cards that don't have a picture of one of the hunters on it, because of course the ones that do should actually be on a hunter board. These other firearm cards could potentially be gained as you play through campaigns, so having them within easy reach is a good idea. Next, we'll go ahead and place out all of the tokens. I'm using game trays. These trays are not inside of the core box, but I find them really useful for setting things up. We have at the very top right game tray in the white tokens that are quite large, or yellowish tint with the symbol inside of it. Those are the blood echo tokens. There are some heart tokens beside it. Again, those came from Arcadia Quest. If you're using the tokens from the Bloodborne base box, they will be regular flat cardboard tokens that'll either be 1 or 3 and so on. In the next game tray to the left of that, we have some chest tokens. So again, if you have the core box, you'll be using chest tokens, or you could potentially use the chest miniatures that I'm showing here. And then to the right of those green chest tokens way in the back, we have some survivor tokens. Basically, there's potential that you could run across an individual that needs to be saved or rescued, and they're represented by those tokens. Then underneath of it, which is a tad difficult to see, we have the corpse tokens. There are 5 of those ones. Moving down to the final game trays, you'll see some fog tokens sticking out there. You'll see this twisty-like icon. Those are frenzy tokens. The X's, which are on the right that show a big white X through the token, are broken lamp tokens. And at the bottom, we have some skull tokens. Those are insight tokens. We've already touched on the chest miniatures. We also have some lamp miniatures, and we have, again, some allies or some tokens that might come out that are specifically called for by the campaigns. Now let's focus on the chapter setup itself. So hunters are going to begin every chapter on the central lamp tile. So we have that tile placed in the middle of the table. We are now going to go ahead and populate a lamp miniature on it to better represent the fact there is a lamp here, but you can see that icon right in the middle in purple. With the lamp in place, so we are now going to place our hunter onto this tile. It's important to note you can place it in any of the 3 spaces divided by white lines as you choose. My hunter is now in position, and we're going to focus our attention now on chapter 1 setup. You guys remember that chapter card that I flipped over for chapter number 1? It has the enemies and tiles laid out. We are now going to go ahead and set those up. The enemies called upon by the chapter 1 setup card are the hunter mob, the huntsman's minion, and the scourge beast. You'll see their cards quite easily as you go through the cards in the game box. It is important to note that these cards are double-sided, so you can flip them and shuffle them. I would do this without looking under the table, and then you're going to place them one at a time across the 3 enemy slots on the hunt board. As you saw earlier, here are the 3 different areas for the enemies, and those enemies are now slotted in. What's really interesting about this is now each enemy associates itself with an icon above it for spawning purposes and resetting purposes. It's also interesting that the hunt board is used left to right when activating miniatures, plus the fact that these cards are double-sided adds a lot of variation in terms of what you might run into as you play things or replay things in the future. Now that you know the enemies that are part of the current chapter you're playing, go ahead into the core box, find all the miniatures, and place them within easy reach. Finally, for the enemies, we need to create the enemy action deck. It's very simple. There's 6 cards, and there's 3 basic, 2 special, and 1 ability. Combining these all together, flipping them over, giving them a good shuffle is going to create the enemy action deck, which will tell you what specific monsters are going to be doing on their activations. You can see, for an example, in the Huntsman Minion, you have a basic, a special, and ability. This is what triggers those, and as you move through the deck, you begin to understand what the odds are of particular attacks coming your way to help you strategize against them. And just like that, the enemy action deck has been shuffled together. We head back to the chapter 1 setup for the final major piece of setup here, which is around the game tiles. The chapter will specifically state whether there is named tiles that need to be a part of the tile deck. So in this case, we have the courtyard lamp, occupied house, a chapel, a ransacked house, but then based on the number of hunters in play, that's what that icon means there, times 2, we're going to grab 2 random map tiles, a max of 6 though. So if you had 4 hunters in play, let's say, you're going to only bring 6 random tiles at max. As you can see, we of course have the central lamp tile with our hunter already placed on it, but I found the 4 tiles that are called upon by the chapter here. They will be going into the tile deck we're creating. I'll then be grabbing 2 at random without looking based on 1 hunter being in play. So in total, we'll have 6 tiles all together. I'll be shuffling them so I have no idea what order they're coming out in. And that wraps up the setup for our tile deck. We'll go ahead and flip over the chapter 1 card from the setup side to the mission side, as we'll need this face up when we begin part 1. And that, my friends, is going to wrap up the setup video for the long hunt in Bloodborne, the board game from CMON Games. Really hope you'll join me in the next episode to see whether I can survive as long as possible in order to complete chapter number 1. Thanks again for watching, and as always, keep on rolling solo.